The lights inside Walker's Cove never ran quite bright enough. Not by design, not by choice, just by the slow surrender of bulbs burning out one at a time over 30 years, and nobody bothering to replace them all at once. The bar sat 3 miles off the main gate of Port Regent Naval Station, wedged between a shuttered pawn shop and a tire yard that only opened on Tuesdays. The sign out front flickered every fourth second. The neon had given up on the apostrophe sometime in 2003. Inside the walls were dark wood panels, scarred with initials and dates carved by drunk sailors who thought they'd remember the moment forever. Most of them didn't. The floor had a soft give to it from decades of spilled beer and boot scuff, the kind of wear that made every step sound muffled, intimate. The jukebox in the corner hadn't worked since the Clinton administration, but nobody moved it. It had become part of the furniture, part of the history. There was no dress code, no loud music. No questions asked about why you were there or who you'd been before you walked through that door. That's why it was always full by 8 in the evening. Lieutenant Commander Reese Caldwell didn't look like she belonged. Not at first glance. She sat in the corner booth with her back to the wall, not to the door. A subtle distinction most people missed. A choice that spoke to training, to instinct, to something deeper than caution. She wore a black hoodie, sleeves pushed to her elbows. Dark cargo pants with no insignia, no patches, no indication of rank or service. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. No makeup, no jewelry except a simple silver watch on her left wrist. In front of her sat a glass of water with a lemon wedge floating near the rim and a plate of fries she hadn't touched in 20 minutes. The fries were cold now. She didn't seem to notice. Her eyes tracked the television above the bar, muted news footage scrolling weather patterns across the Carolina coast. But she wasn't really watching. She was decompressing, unwinding the coil of a 14-hour day that had started in a classified briefing room and ended with a roster of names she'd be responsible for starting tomorrow. 56 personnel, 4 SEAL platoons, Marine reconnaissance elements, explosive ordnance disposal techs, cyber operations liaison, and 1 inter-unit attachment team fresh off a 9-month deployment who didn't know yet that their next 8 weeks would determine whether they ever deployed again. The man behind the bar moved with the economy of someone who'd learned not to waste motion. Garrett Blackwood was 68 years old, broad through the shoulders and lean. Everywhere else, the kind of build that comes from a lifetime of discipline maintained long after the uniform comes off. His hair was steel gray, cut high and tight. His forearms were roped with old muscle and older scars, the kind that don't come from accidents. He wore a faded flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up. On his left forearm, just below the elbow, was a tattoo most people didn't look at long enough to recognize. The SEAL trident, faded now, the ink softened by decades, but unmistakable if you knew what you were looking at. He moved down the bar with a fresh glass of ice water and set it on Reese's table without a word. No smile, no small talk, just a single nod. She returned it, the same slow, deliberate gesture. A thank you that didn't ask for conversation. She'd been coming here since she was 22, fresh out of basic underwater demolition, training the only woman in a class of 43. Garrett had known her longer than that. He'd known her since she was 5 years old, pigtails and scraped knees following her father around the base like a shadow. Commander James Caldwell, SEAL Team 3, killed in action, Fallujah 2007. Reese had been 13. Garrett had been at the funeral. Had stood with her mother while the rifles cracked and the bugler played and a folded flag passed from gloved hand to gloved hand. He'd watched Reese stand perfectly still in a black dress, face dry, jaw set. She hadn't cried. Not then. Maybe not ever. 3 years later, she'd shown up at Walker's Cove alone. 17 years old, told Garrett she wanted to be a SEAL. He'd looked at her for a long time. Then he'd said, "Your old man would have tried to talk you out of it." She'd met his eyes and said, "That's why I'm asking you instead." Garrett had smiled, put a glass of water in front of her, said, "Then let's start with the hard part, learning when to be quiet." She'd been his student ever since, unofficial, unpaid, but as real as any mentorship that ever existed. He taught her to shoot at distance, to read terrain, to understand that combat wasn't about strength or speed, it was about patience, about making one perfect decision when everyone around you was making 3 bad ones. Now she was 27, 3 combat tours, 23 confirmed kills as a sniper, a Navy Cross she never talked about, and the fourth woman in history to earn the SEAL Trident. Garrett never asked her about the deployments, never asked what she'd seen or who she'd lost. He just poured her water and gave her space. Some nights that was enough. Tonight it had to be. The door swung open hard. Four men walked in like they owned the oxygen in the room. They wore desert camouflage uniforms, sleeves rolled at the elbows, chest pockets, slouching from too many hours in the field. Their boots were dusty. Their laughs were louder than necessary. They moved with the swagger of men who'd just survived something dangerous and wanted everyone to know it without having to say it out loud. They weren't locals, weren't regulars, temporary. The kind of men whose assignments gave them just enough time to grow cocky, but not long enough to learn humility. The tallest one led the group, broad through the shoulders, square jaw, a crooked grin that made him look younger than he was. There was a faint scar under his left eye, the kind that comes from shrapnel or a fight or both. He waved Garrett down with two fingers and a smirk. Rounds for the table, top shelf, let's make it a welcome party. His voice carried, not quite shouting but loud enough to announce himself to the whole room. The second one, shorter, wiry, with a nervous energy that made his leg bounce even when he was sitting, glanced around the bar. Welcome to what? The third one dragged his stool back with a loud scrape. To the only decent bar within 10 miles that doesn't play country music. The fourth one, buzz cut and thick through the neck, was already scanning the room with the slow sweep of someone cataloging threats out of habit. His eyes landed on Reese. 10 o'clock, solo table, civilian. The tall one, Corporal Thorne Mackenzie, shrugged. Contractor, maybe, or somebody's ex. A laugh went around the table. Not mean yet, just lazy, confident, curious in the way young wolves are before they test who's in charge. They kept their distance for now, but their eyes drifted back to her. They didn't know her name, didn't know her face, but they noticed her silence, and that was enough to make assumptions. Reese lifted her glass, took a slow sip, returned it to the exact center of the coaster. She didn't shift, didn't react, but her peripheral vision tracked every movement at their table. The way Mackenzie leaned back with both arms spread wide. The way the wiry one, Corporal Brennan Cole, kept glancing at the door like he expected someone to walk in. The way the one with the buzz cut, Lance Corporal Dane Granger, cracked his knuckles and flexed his shoulders like he was trying to shake off the last 9 months. The quieter one, Private Wyatt Sterling, sat with his back straight and his hands folded on the table. He wasn't laughing as loud, wasn't talking as much. He was watching, like her. Garrett passed by with a tray of beers, set them down without ceremony. Mackenzie raised his glass. To making it home. To not getting blown up, Cole added. To the only thing harder than war, Granger said, grinning, being bored stateside. They drank. The conversation shifted. Someone told a story about a convoy that got stuck in the sand outside Ramadi. Someone else did a bad impression of their company commander. The volume climbed. The laughter got sharper. And then it happened. Mackenzie turned in his seat to gesture at something elbow-high, beer in hand. His boot caught the edge of a loose chair leg behind him, just enough to knock him off balance for half a second. The beer tipped. Amber liquid arced through the air in a perfect parabola and splashed across Reese's table. Half the fries were soaked. The water glass tipped but didn't fall. A thin line of beer ran across the table, dripped over the edge, and pooled in her lap. For a moment, the bar paused, just long enough to register what happened. Then came the laughter. Mackenzie turned and saw the mess and held both palms up. Whoa, my bad. That one's on the chair, not me. The others howled. Damn thing moved on its own, Cole said. Granger leaned back, grinning. Maybe it's her fault. What's she doing sitting that close to a combat zone anyway? Reese didn't move. She set her napkin down, picked up her water glass, shifted it back into place. Then she began dabbing at her lap without urgency, without even glancing in their direction. That rattled them more than it should have. You all right over there? Mackenzie called out. He was still grinning, but there was an edge now, an expectation. He wanted a reaction, a glare, a sharp word, something that confirmed he'd gotten under her skin. She didn't give him one. Garrett appeared from behind the bar, silent as smoke. He set a fresh napkin on her table and a clean glass of water. She looked up at him, just for a second. Appreciate it, she said. Her voice was low, clear, measured. That was the first time any of them had heard it. You're not going to throw that one back at us, Cole asked, half laughing. She looked at him, one clean glance, then back to the napkin. No words. That absence of drama started to itch. Maybe she's just uptight, Granger muttered. She's probably writing a Yelp review in her head right now, Cole said. 0 stars. Marine's too rowdy. That got a chuckle. But Reese didn't move, didn't speak again. She just shifted her chair slightly, not away from them, but to an angle that opened her field of view. Then she exhaled, once barely audible, and went back to watching the muted television, as if their storm hadn't even made landfall. By the 4th round, the table had started circling her like flies, too bored to stay still. Not direct, not obvious, just enough to keep her in their periphery, to see if the next provocation might tip her into something reactive. She remained still. They didn't like that. It was Cole who stood first. He did it casually, carrying his fresh drink with theatrical care like he was trying not to spill it again, grinning at his friends as he meandered toward her side of the bar. Truce drink, he offered, holding the glass up. She didn't look up. He held the glass a little higher, looming just near her elbow. Least I can do after nearly drowning your fries. She glanced at the glass. It was already sweating. A small droplet traced the curve down to the coaster. No thank you, she said. Not rude, not defensive, just final. He set the glass down anyway, right next to her water, and when she didn't touch it, didn't even flinch, he leaned closer. You're kind of a mystery, you know that, Mackenzie called from behind him. Careful, Cole. She might be CIA. Could be. We're all getting profiled right now. The others laughed. Cole grinned, gestured with his thumb over his shoulder. You hear that I always thought I had good bone structure for a file photo. Then casually, far too casually, he bumped the drink forward. It tipped, not violently, not obviously, just enough to send a slow wash of whiskey across her table, over the napkin she'd just folded, pooling at the edge before dripping off and soaking the cuff of her sleeve. The table roared with laughter. She still didn't react, just stared at the spreading stain like it was the most unoriginal thing she'd seen all day, like she'd been waiting for it. Garrett froze behind the bar. You could feel him weighing how far to step in without making it worse. Reese calmly stood. Her chair didn't scrape. She moved it with control, not retreat. She took 2 steps sideways, lifted the edge of her jacket to shake off the moisture, then turned. Not to them, but to the other side of the bar. There was an open 2-top near the wall. She crossed the floor and sat down, this time with her back to the room. But before she did, she said it. Just one sentence. Over her shoulder. Soft. Even. You should have spilled the first drink better. This one made it too obvious. The laughter stopped. Cole blinked. What? She didn't repeat it. Didn't need to. At the table, Mackenzie leaned in. Wait, what did she just say? Cole muttered. Something about the first drink. That it was better. No, Sterling said quietly, his brows knit. She said we made it obvious. They looked at each other suddenly, unsure if this was still funny. Reese lifted the new glass of water Garrett had already set down for her, took a sip, adjusted the collar of her jacket, resumed watching the television. Now on base sports highlights. She didn't look at them again. She didn't have to, because somehow, without touching a thing, she just changed the air in the entire room. The table quieted, not all at once, but in stages, like a joke dragging too long until it loops back into discomfort. Cole returned to his seat without the same confidence. The others shifted in their chairs, glancing toward her new table with more calculation than curiosity. Mackenzie leaned back and crossed his arms. She's got some ice in her spine. Granger snorted. She's got contractor boots. Bet she teaches classroom stuff. Safety compliance or something. Sterling hadn't spoken much all night, but now he did. She never looked at us like we were funny. Not once. Mackenzie shrugged. So, doesn't mean anything. Some people are just wired up tight. Cole laughed, but it didn't land right. Or she's nursing a dishonorable and trying not to get recognized. Sterling didn't laugh. He just wiped his hand on a napkin. She moved tables after 2 spills. Didn't flinch either time. She's not new to this. She's avoiding a scene, Mackenzie replied. You see how calm she was. That's not power, that's someone playing invisible. Sterling looked at him. Or someone who's done this dance before and knows exactly when to step out of the spotlight. Mackenzie scoffed. Look, if she was anyone important, someone in this place would have saluted by now, or she'd be with a detail, or at least not drinking water like a school teacher. Back near the wall, Reese stood again. She didn't rush. She folded a napkin, dropped a few bills under the glass, tugged the sleeve of her jacket once to straighten the cuff. The television now cycled through grainy footage of a night landing on an aircraft carrier. No sound, just slow-motion wheels hitting deck. Sparks in the dark. She moved toward the exit, not out of fear, not retreat, just done. As she passed their table, none of them spoke, not at first. She walked between Mackenzie and Cole without glancing in either direction. Then Mackenzie turned in his seat, voice lower now, leaning toward her just enough that only their table would hear. Careful walking alone, sweetheart. You might bump into someone a little less patient. She stopped, not dramatically, just mid-step. Her head turned. No expression, no stare down, just enough to acknowledge the words. Then calmly she looked at him and said, "Funny thing about predators, Corporal. They're the easiest ones to track." She let the last word land, then turned and left. The door swung shut behind her. Cole let out a slow breath. That was specific. Granger shifted. She knew his rank. Mackenzie tried to laugh, but it didn't land. His grin stayed frozen on his face for a second too long before fading. None of them noticed the man at the end of the bar. Garrett Blackwood stood with his arms crossed, half-empty glass in front of him, watching the whole thing from behind the worn stretch of countertop. He didn't smile, didn't speak. He just reached for his phone, opened the security app, rewound the footage to 20 minutes ago, watched it play back in silence. The first spill, the second, the laughter, the exit. Then he opened his contacts, scrolled to a name near the top, pressed call. It rang twice. Garrett, Reese's voice, calm, like she'd been expecting it. "Security camera caught everything," he said. "You want me to file it?" There was a pause, not hesitation, just consideration. "No," she said. "They're on my evaluation roster tomorrow. If they're going to fail, it needs to be on their merit." Garrett smiled, small, quiet. "You're giving them rope. I'm giving them choices. Most people hang themselves." He glanced at the four Marines still sitting at the table. Quieter now, uneasy. "Your old man would have done the same thing." Another pause, longer this time. "He also said to document everything," Reese replied. "Already saved to external drive." "Good." A beat, then softer. "Thanks, Garrett." "Any time, kid." The line went dead. Garrett set the phone down, looked at the Marines one more time. Then he went back to wiping down glasses like nothing had happened. At 0630 the next morning, the administrative wing of Port Regent Naval Station buzzed with the kind of quiet efficiency that only military command buildings ever manage. Everything smelled like strong coffee and burnt toner. Overhead lights hummed softly. Steel doors clicked shut with just enough pressure to remind people where they were. Down the far hallway behind a frosted glass door marked Joint Operations Integration Office clearance, required someone signed a final approval on a schedule. Lieutenant Commander Reese Caldwell sat at her desk in full uniform. The dark Navy working uniform, crisp and clean name tape, centered rank insignia precise. The seal trident sat above her left chest pocket, small, gold, unmistakable. Beside it, the ribbon rack, Combat Action Ribbon, Navy Cross, Purple Heart, Iraq Campaign Medal, Afghanistan Campaign Medal, 3 rows, more than most officers twice her age. On her left shoulder, a rectangular black patch with no visible text, just an embedded chip strip that opened every secure door on the installation. In her hand, a tablet. On the screen, a finalized rotation designation for the upcoming task force integration phase. 56 personnel, 4 SEAL platoons, Marine recon elements, EOD techs, cyber ops liaison, and command-level behavioral oversight she was directly assigned to manage. A quiet knock came from the door. "Ma'am," said a petty officer stepping in with a folder. Young, nervous, new to the command. Admin has confirmation that the third inter-unit attachment team arrived yesterday evening. Their evaluation cycle starts today. Reese took the file without looking up, opened it, scanned the names: Corporal Thorne Mackenzie, Corporal Brennan Cole, Private Wyatt Sterling, Lance Corporal Dane Granger. She didn't blink, didn't pause, just read the rest of the page. Service records, deployment history, citations. One letter of reprimand for Granger. Disciplinary action, alcohol-related incident 6 months prior. Nothing disqualifying, but noted. She closed the folder. They reported late last night after re-entry processing, the petty officer continued. Debriefed at 0400, released to barracks at 0530. Reese nodded once, no visible reaction. The petty officer hesitated. Problem, ma'am? Reese signed the last line of the evaluation sheet with a stylus, handed the tablet back. Not yet. She stood, posture precise, not stiff. There was no urgency in the way she moved, no hint of escalation, just method. Confirm their unit lead knows they'll be participating in the readiness cohesion brief this afternoon, 1400 hours. Yes, ma'am, they're scheduled to be present. Good, make sure the seating is staggered. I don't want them all grouped together. The petty officer blinked, then nodded again. Understood. Reese exited the room without further comment. She didn't carry a clipboard, didn't carry a water bottle, just a single folded schedule in one hand and her ID badge clipped to her belt. In the hallway, two instructors paused their conversation as she passed. One of them, a logistics officer with gray at his temples, murmured low, "That's Caldwell, right?" The other one, younger, nodded. "Yeah, took over oversight after Lieutenant Reeves rotated out. She's a SEAL, command qualified, 3 tours, signals and extraction ops, no media record, no public bios. Ghost file." The first one whistled softly. "She doesn't look like command." The second one smiled. "That's the point." Reese moved past a wall of file cabinets and paused beside a large glass panel overlooking the operations bay below. Marines ran ladder drills. SEALs cycled through rotation scenarios. Sweat, commands, timing, all visible. Her reflection stared back at her through the glass. Civilian clothes last night, command today. She watched them for a long moment, eyes narrowing slightly as she saw 4 men pass through the far gate, loud, confident, clueless. She didn't smile, didn't flinch. She just folded the schedule and slid it into her pocket and waited for the afternoon. The readiness briefing room wasn't built to intimidate, but it always managed to. It was square, windowless, painted the exact shade of gray that made everything inside it feel 1 decibel quieter. The long table stretched from one end to the other, surrounded by 2 rows of chairs. Front row for lead evaluators, back row for operators and junior staff. A digital projector hummed quietly from the ceiling, looping a silent slideshow. Chain of command, unit objectives, 0 failure expectations. Corporal Thorne Mackenzie swaggered in first, uniform not quite pressed, boots passable, demeanor unbothered. Behind him came Cole, Granger, and Sterling, all wearing the same mild hangover masked as overconfidence. None of them recognized the room. None of them cared to. "Guess this is where they tell us to stop scaring the Navy boys," Cole muttered, tossing his field folder onto the table like it owed him something. Granger smirked. "Maybe we're getting medals." Sterling didn't speak. He just took a seat near the end, away from the others, eyes already scanning the room. A few SEAL candidates were already seated in the far corner. They didn't engage, just watched. One of them subtly elbowed the guy next to him and nodded toward the Marine group. The second guy raised an eyebrow, whispered something. They both smirked, but the shift came when the side door opened. No fanfare, no announcement, just boots on linoleum. Lieutenant Commander Reese Caldwell walked in, full uniform, command patch visible, trident gleaming like it had never been touched by dirt. Shoulders relaxed, eyes already scanning the room as if she'd been standing in it before they ever arrived. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Mackenzie froze mid-comment, his eyes flicked to her face. Something behind his grin started to decay. Cole blinked once, then again. Granger whispered, "No way." Sterling leaned forward slowly, as if by leaning he could undo last night. Reese walked to the center of the room and set a single folder on the table. Her hands moved without flourish. She stood behind the chair at the head of the table but didn't sit. "Good afternoon," she said. One sentence, and the room stilled. Today's session is a joint operational integrity evaluation. Cross-unit behavior and cohesion are under direct review for upcoming Joint Task Force assignments. She didn't raise her voice, but the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Some of the Marines began to shift in their seats, shoulders squaring, hands coming off thighs, folders suddenly opening. No one laughed. Reese turned the page in her folder. "You've each been assigned to temporary integrated teams. Your cohesion ratings will be submitted at the end of the week." She looked directly at Mackenzie. He swallowed once. Then she glanced at Granger, then Cole, then Sterling. One by one, no emotion, no theatrics, just recognition. Like she wasn't introducing herself at all, just confirming what they already should have known. A ripple of whispers passed down the row of SEALs in the back. Someone exhaled softly and whispered, "Oh, damn, that's her." No one said a word after that. And for the first time since they walked in, Corporal Thorne Mackenzie sat up straight, like he couldn't quite remember how tall he was supposed to be. The operational circuit wasn't designed to break people. It was designed to reveal them. 12 stations spread across the Port Regent training compound. Each one pulled from real-world scenarios. Each one calibrated to expose the gap between what a warrior thought he was and what he actually became under pressure. Station 6 was the worst. Everyone knew it. Urban warfare simulation. Live rounds replaced with marking cartridges that left bruises and paint. Role players trained to react like real hostiles. Real civilians. Real chaos compressed into a 12-minute window where every decision mattered, and most of them were wrong. Lieutenant Commander Reese Caldwell stood at the observation tower with a tablet in one hand and a radio headset looped over one ear. Below her, the kill house waited. 3-story concrete structure. 20 rooms, 40 windows, a maze of stairwells and blind corners and doors that opened the wrong way. The kind of place where angles mattered more than firepower. Where hesitation got you killed and aggression got everyone else killed. She keyed the radio. "Control, this is Caldwell. Team 3 is staged and ready." "Copy, Commander. Scenario is live. Clock starts on your mark." She looked down at the 4 Marines standing at the entry point. Mackenzie in front, Granger to his left, Cole to his right, Sterling in the rear, designated marksman. They wore full tactical gear, helmets, plate carriers, rifle optics, everything they'd need except the one thing that mattered: judgment. Reese pressed the timer. "Execute." The door breached. Flashbang detonated. White light and percussion. Mackenzie moved first, fast and aggressive, rifle up, sweeping left. Granger followed, peeling right. Cole hesitated for half a second at the threshold. Fatal. A marking round hit him in the chest from an unseen angle. Yellow paint exploded across his plate carrier. "Cole, you're KIA!" a voice crackled over the loudspeaker. "Remain in place." Sterling moved past him, calm, scanning high while the others scanned low. Good instinct, but he was alone in it. They cleared the first room, empty. Second room, 2 role players with hands up, civilians. Mackenzie waved them down, kept moving. No time to secure them, no time to verify. Granger checked the closet. Clear. Third room, contact. Role player with a rifle concealed behind a door. Mackenzie took the shot. Clean hit. Center mass. The role player dropped. But as he did, a second role player appeared from the hallway. Female. No weapon. Hands out. Screaming in Arabic. Role play. Trained scenario. Granger didn't wait. Didn't assess. He fired. 2 rounds. Both hit. Yellow paint across her shoulder and neck. "Granger civilian casualty," the loudspeaker announced. "Remain in place." Mackenzie spun. "What the hell, Granger?" "She was coming at us. With no weapon." Sterling's voice cut through. "We need to keep moving. We're down 2. But they weren't moving like a team anymore. They were moving like individuals occupying the same space. Mackenzie took point again, faster now, trying to make up time. He turned a corner without clearing it. Took 3 marking rounds to the side. Red paint this time. Lethal hit from a concealed position. Mackenzie, you're KIA. Remain in place. Sterling was alone now. One man, 5 rooms still unsecured. The objective, a simulated high-value target somewhere in the building. He moved slowly, methodically, cleared each angle, checked each door, found the HVT in the back room on the second floor. Role player sitting on a chair, hands-bound hood over his head. Sterling approached. I'm U.S. military. You're safe. We're getting you out. But the clock ran out before he reached the exit. Time, Reese said into the radio. Exercise complete. The lights came up. The role players stood. Mackenzie, Granger, and Cole pulled off their helmets. Sweat poured down their faces. Granger was breathing hard. Mackenzie stared at the floor. Cole wouldn't make eye contact with anyone. Sterling walked out last. He was the only one still calm. Reese descended the observation tower stairs, boots on metal grating. Each step echoed. She walked into the kill house through the front door they'd breached 8 minutes ago, stood in the center of the first room, waited. The 4 Marines filed in, formed a loose line, still wearing their gear, still carrying the weight of failure. Reese didn't speak immediately. She let the silence stretch, let them feel it. Then she walked to the tablet mounted on the wall, pulled up the exercise footage, pressed play. They watched themselves die. Corporal Cole, Reese said, freezing the frame at the moment he took the marking round. You hesitated at the threshold, half a second. In a real scenario, you'd be dead before you realized you stopped moving. Why did you hesitate? Cole's jaw worked. I thought I saw movement on the left. You thought, or you saw? I thought. Thinking gets you killed. Seeing keeps you alive. What's the difference? Cole didn't answer. The difference is training, Reese said. You don't think your way through a door. You move through it. Your body already knows where to go. If you're still thinking, you haven't trained enough. She moved to the next frame. Granger's shot, the civilian dropping. Lance Corporal Granger, you just killed an unarmed woman. Explain your decision. Granger's neck flushed red. She was advancing on our position, in a combat zone that's hostile behavior. Was she armed? I couldn't confirm. Then you don't fire. Rules of engagement are not suggestions. They're the only thing separating us from the enemy. You just violated them. Ma'am, in a real scenario, Reese interrupted, you just created an international incident. You just gave the enemy a propaganda victory. You just turned the local population against us. And you did it because you were scared. Granger's face went from red to white. Reese moved to the final frame. Mackenzie turning the corner. Corporal Mackenzie, you led your team into a fatal funnel without clearing your angles. You died in the first 60 seconds of contact. Why? Mackenzie met her eyes. I was trying to make up time after we lost Cole. You were trying to make up for a mistake by making a bigger one. That's not leadership. That's panic. She turned off the tablet, faced them directly. Last night, Corporal Mackenzie, you told me to be careful walking alone. You said I might bump into someone less patient. Today you walked through a fatal funnel without checking corners, and you died. The room went cold. Echabon. Corporal Cole, you hesitated. Just like you hesitated when Private Sterling tried to stop the second drink from being spilled at the bar. Cole's eyes widened. Lance Corporal Granger, you shot an unarmed person because you assumed a threat. Just like you assumed I was someone you could disrespect without consequence. Granger opened his mouth, closed it. Private Sterling, you saw the mistakes. You didn't speak up, twice. Sterling straightened. Ma'am, I should have been more vocal. Yes, you should have. Reese walked to the center of the room, pulled her phone from her pocket, opened the security app, turned the screen toward them. On the screen, footage from Walker's Cove. The first spill, the second, the laughter, the comments. This footage was offered to me last night. I declined to submit it to command because I wanted to see if your behavior at the bar was an anomaly or a pattern. She let that sink in. Today's exercise proved it's a pattern. You don't respect authority you can't immediately identify. You don't respect teammates who challenge you. And you especially don't respect people you perceive as weaker. Mackenzie's voice cracked. Ma'am, the bar was off duty. Your character doesn't clock out, Corporal. The door behind them opened. Garrett Blackwood stepped through. He wore khaki pants and a button-down shirt, but over the shirt draped across his shoulders was a uniform top. Faded, oiled, Master Chief rank insignia on the collar. 3 rows of ribbons across the left breast. Navy Cross, Silver Star, 3 Purple Hearts, Combat Action Ribbon, Southwest Asia Service Medal, Somalia Campaign Medal, Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal. The Marines stared. Garrett walked to the center of the room, stood beside Reese. His voice was gravelly, calm, the voice of someone who'd seen everything twice and wasn't impressed by much. 42 years ago, I walked through a door in Mogadishu. My team leader told me to hold fire on a civilian. I wanted to shoot. Thought he was wrong, but I held. Turned out the civilian was running from the hostiles, not with them. If I'd fired, I'd have killed an innocent man, and I'd have spent the last 4 decades living with that. He looked directly at Granger. Son, in today's exercise, I played the unarmed woman. You shot me. I survived 3 combat tours getting shot at by people who actually wanted me dead. Today you killed me because you didn't trust your commander's training. Granger's hands were shaking. Garrett turned to Mackenzie. And you, Corporal, you walked into a kill zone like you were invincible. I've buried men who thought that. All of them were wrong. He looked at Sterling last. You were the only one who did it right. You knew your team was dying around you. You kept moving, kept thinking. That's what separates operators from casualties. Reese stepped forward. Garrett Sullivan is Master Chief, retired. 3 deployments. Gulf War, Somalia, Bosnia. The man you ignored while you laughed at me in his bar. The silence was absolute. Tomorrow, Reese said, we run a different drill. You'll have one more chance to prove you can function as a team. Dismissed. They filed out. Slowly, heads down. The swagger was gone. Sterling lingered. Ma'am, request permission to speak. Granted. I should have stopped them. At the bar. And today, I didn't. That's on me. Reese studied him. You're right, it is, but you're here asking the question. That means you're learning. Don't let it happen again. Yes, ma'am. He left. Garrett waited until the door closed. You were hard on them. I was honest with them. That Mackenzie kid, he's carrying something. Reese glanced at him. What makes you say that? The way he looked at you when you walked in wasn't just surprise, was something else, something personal. Reese didn't respond, but her jaw tightened slightly. Garrett noticed. You know him. I know his brother. Garrett waited. Captain Devin Mackenzie, Fallujah 2016. He was one of mine. He survived, medical discharge, lost his right leg. Garrett absorbed that. And the kid blames you. Probably. Is he right to bar you? Reese met his eyes. Devin was wounded covering my extraction. He saved my life and 3 others. If he hadn't moved when he did, we'd all be dead. So no, he's not right. But I understand why he thinks he is. Garrett nodded slowly. Grief doesn't do math. No, it doesn't. You gonna tell the kid? Not yet. Let him figure out who he is first. Then we'll talk about who his brother was. Day 2 began before sunrise. The rifle range sat 3 miles north of the main compound, carved into a hillside that overlooked nothing but scrub brush and red dirt for as far as anyone could see. 12 shooting lanes, targets at variable distances, wind flags snapping in the early morning gusts. Gunnery Sergeant Kellen Price stood at the range control tower with a weathered clipboard and a thermos of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He was 62 years old, retired Marine Scout sniper, with a face that looked like it had been carved from the same stone as the hills behind him. He didn't smile, didn't make small talk, didn't care who you were or where you'd been. He cared about one thing, whether you could shoot. The 4 Marines stood at the firing line, rifles racked, ammunition staged, range cards blank. Price's voice carried across the range through a bullhorn. Unknown distance targets, 5 rounds each. Wind is 15 miles per hour, gusting to 20. You will calculate your own range. You will adjust your own optics. You will engage on my command. Spotters will call hits and misses, no second chances. He lowered the bullhorn, looked at his watch. Corporal Mackenzie, you're first. Take your position. Mackenzie moved to lane 1, went prone. Settled behind his rifle, a standard issue M40A6. Good rifle. Not great. Not for this distance. He looked downrange. 5 steel targets scattered across the hillside at varying elevations. Smallest one no bigger than a dinner plate. He ranged the first target with his scope's mil-dot reticle. Estimated 800 yards. Adjusted for wind, adjusted for elevation. Took a breath, let half of it out, squeezed. The rifle cracked. The round sailed, missed low and left. Paint marker on the dirt 3 feet from the target. Miss, the spotter called. Mackenzie adjusted, fired again. Miss, high this time. He fired 3 more rounds, got 1 hit, out of 5. Price made a note on his clipboard, said nothing. Cole went next. 0 hits, Granger managed 2. Sterling, steady and methodical, landed 3 out of 5. The best of the group. Price wrote down the final score. Then he picked up the radio. Commander Caldwell, range is clear for your demonstration. A voice crackled back. Copy, inbound. 2 minutes later, a vehicle pulled up to the range control tower. Reese stepped out. She wore a simple field uniform, no rank insignia visible. Hair pulled back. She carried her own rifle. Not an M40, a custom build. Macmillan TAC 338, longer barrel, heavier round, built for distance. She walked to lane 1, didn't speak to the Marines, didn't acknowledge them, just went prone, adjusted the bipod, checked the wind flags, ranged the first target. Price lifted the bullhorn. Engage when ready. Reese's breathing slowed. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Her finger rested on the trigger. Light, no pressure yet. She watched the wind flags, waited for the gust to pass, then squeezed. The rifle roared. The round flew. 1.2 seconds of flight time. The first target rang like a bell, dead center. She cycled the bolt, smooth, mechanical, ranged the second target, fired, hit, third target, hit, fourth target, hit, fifth target, smallest one, farthest out. She took an extra second, adjusted for the wind, pushing harder at distance, fired, hit, 5 for 5, fastest time in base history, the record she'd set 3 years ago, just broken by herself. She stood, slung the rifle, walked to where the Marines were standing. Price followed. Corporal Mackenzie, Reese said, you missed 4 out of 5. Why? Mackenzie's voice was tight. Wind calculation was off, ma'am. No, your breathing was off. You rushed the shot. You were thinking about the result instead of the process. She turned to Cole. You flinched every time. Before the trigger broke. That's a training issue. You're anticipating recoil instead of controlling it. Granger next. You overcompensated on your second shot. Adjusted too much. Sniper work isn't about big corrections. It's about small ones. Millimeters matter more than inches. Sterling. You did well, but you hesitated between shots. You were recalculating every time instead of trusting your initial data. Trust your fundamentals. Price stepped forward. Commander Caldwell holds the base record for long-range precision. Set it 3 years ago, 1,500 meters. Crosswind, 25 miles per hour. 5 for 5, hasn't been beaten. You boys just watched her do it again at shorter distance in less time. He looked at them without expression. Combat doesn't care about your opinion of who's behind the rifle. It only cares if the target goes down. She put every round on target. You didn't. That's not a gender issue. That's a skill issue. Reese walked back to her vehicle, didn't wait for a response. Didn't need one. That evening, Mackenzie found her in the command building. 3rd floor, small office, door open. She was reviewing files when he knocked. Ma'am, request permission to speak privately. She looked up, gestured to the chair. He sat, didn't relax, kept his back straight. Ma'am, I need to tell you something. My older brother, Captain Devin Mackenzie, he served under your command. Reese's expression didn't change, but her hand stopped moving. I remember Devin. He was wounded, Fallujah, 2016, lost his right leg, medical discharge. I know. Mackenzie's voice cracked. I blamed you. For 3 years, I thought if you'd been faster, better, he'd still have his leg. Reese set the file down. Your brother was wounded covering my extraction. I was pinned down with 3 other operators. Devon moved into the open to draw fire. He took 2 rounds. One shattered his femur, the other severed his femoral artery. If he hadn't moved, we'd all be dead. Mackenzie stared at his hands. He told me, I know, but I couldn't let go of the anger. And when I saw you at the bar, I wanted to hurt you. That's why I spilled the drink. The second one, on purpose. Silence. Then Reese opened a drawer in her desk, pulled out an envelope, set it in front of him. Your brother wrote me this 6 months ago. Mackenzie picked it up, hands shaking, opened it, read. The letter was short, handwritten, neat block letters. Commander Caldwell. My brother Thorne is being stationed at Port Regent. He carries anger towards you that I don't share. The hardest part of losing my leg wasn't the injury. It was watching him carry rage that isn't his to carry. If you encounter him, I ask one thing. Help him see what I see. That you're the reason I'm alive, to watch my daughter take her first steps. Show him what a real warrior looks like. Devon. Mackenzie's hands dropped to his lap. The letter fell. His shoulders shook. He didn't make a sound, but tears ran down his face. Reese stood, walked around the desk, sat in the chair beside him. Not across from him, beside him. Your brother saved my life. I think about that every day. I think about the fact that he's home with his family because he made the hardest choice a warrior can make. He gave part of himself so others could stay whole. Her voice was quiet. You've been angry at the wrong person, Corporal. The enemy took his leg, not me. And Devon doesn't want you carrying that weight. He wants you to be better than the anger. Mackenzie wiped his face with the back of his hand. I don't know if I can. Yes, you can, because you're his brother, and he wouldn't have asked me to help you if he didn't believe you could. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Mackenzie stood, steadied himself. Permission to keep the letter, ma'am. Granted. He walked to the door, stopped, turned. I'm sorry, for everything. I know. He left. Reese sat alone in the quiet office, stared at the place where the letter had been. Then she closed the drawer and went back to the files. Day 3 was wilderness, 72 hours, no supplies, no jeeps, no communication except emergency beacon if someone got hurt bad enough to need extraction. 30 miles of mountain terrain, navigate by map and compass, evade enemy patrols. Reach the extraction point by dawn on the 3rd day. The 4 Marines stood at the drop point with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a single canteen each. A map, a compass. That's it. Price stood beside the transport vehicle. You'll be hunted. Opposition forces already deployed. They know the terrain better than you. They're faster than you, and they've been doing this longer than you've been alive. Your job is to not get caught. Good luck. The vehicle drove away, dust cloud trailing behind it. They were alone. For the first 12 hours, they moved well. Mackenzie led. Sterling navigated. Cole and Granger took turns on rear security. They covered 8 miles, found water, set up a cold camp in a dried creek bed. But on the 2nd day, things unraveled. They missed a terrain feature, got turned around, wasted 3 hours backtracking. Tempers flared. Mackenzie and Granger argued about the route. Cole just wanted to stop. Sterling tried to mediate. They didn't notice the ambush until it was too late. The opposition force hit them from 3 sides. Fast, coordinated, professional, smoke grenades, flash bangs, simulated gunfire. In 30 seconds, it was over. All 4 on the ground, zip ties on their wrists, hoods over their heads. They were marched 2 miles to a holding area, sat on the ground, hoods stayed on. Then a voice, familiar, calm. You boys move loud. Heard you coming from half a mile out. The hoods came off. Garrett Blackwood stood in front of them. Full tactical gear, older gear, Vietnam-era web harness, compass on a cord, no radio, no GPS, just experience. Behind him, 3 other men, all older, all veterans, the opposition force. Garrett crouched down, eye level with them. In 1991, I spent 6 days behind enemy lines in Iraq. No resupply, no extraction, just me and my team. We made it out because we moved slow, thought fast, and we sure as hell didn't argue loud enough for the enemy to hear. He looked at each of them. You failed this exercise in the first 6 hours. You relied on speed instead of stealth. You argued instead of adapting. And you walked into an ambush that a boot private should have seen coming. Mackenzie spoke. Master Chief, I'm not a Master Chief anymore, son. I'm just an old man who knows how to move through mountains. And you just got caught by me and 3 other retirees who should have been fishing instead of babysitting Marines who think technology replaces fieldcraft. He stood. Commander Caldwell will debrief you when you get back. But I'll tell you now, she learned these lessons when she was 17. Trained with me in these same hills. She learned patience. You need to learn it too. The zip ties came off. The Marines were released, given coordinates to the extraction point, told to walk back, no vehicle, no shortcuts. It took them 16 hours. When they finally reached base, exhausted, dehydrated, humiliated, Reese was waiting. She didn't say anything, just handed each of them a bottle of water. Watched them drink. Then she said, tomorrow, final exercise. This is your last chance. And walked away. The briefing came at 0530, before the sun, before coffee, before anyone was ready for the words that would change everything. Colonel Marcus Brennan stood at the front of the operations center, 61 years old, Gulf War veteran, 2 tours, silver haircut, military sharp, 3 rows of ribbons that told stories he never spoke about. His voice carried the weight of command and something else. Urgency. Task Force Orion deployment has been accelerated. 10 days, not 60. The room went still. 56 personnel, all staring, all calculating what that meant. Training compressed, evaluations compressed, margin for error gone. Joint operations with coalition forces begin 14 November. Syria-Iraq border region, high-value target interdiction. You know the mission profile. What you don't know is that only passing teams deploy. Anyone who fails final evaluation stays stateside. No exceptions, no appeals. He let that land. Heavy, final. Final exercise begins at 1300 hours today. Joint SEAL Marine Operations Simulation. Real-world scenario, real-world stakes. Commander Caldwell will brief specifics. That's all. He left the podium. The room erupted in low conversations. Nervous energy. Reese stood in the back, watched them process, watched them realize the timeline had just collapsed and there was no room left to be anything except ready. Mackenzie sat with his team in the far corner. Cole looked pale. Granger stared at his hands. Sterling was the only one who seemed calm. But even he had tension in his jaw. Reese walked to their table, stood at the head. They looked up. You have 4 hours to prepare. Study the mission brief. Check your gear. Get your heads right. At 1300, you're going into a scenario based on a real operation from 2017. Syria, hostage extraction. Intel was compromised. The mission failed. 2 KIA, 12 wounded. The HVT was never recovered. She paused. Let them absorb that. Your job is to do better than we did. Questions? Mackenzie raised his hand. Ma'am, who leads you do corporal? His face drained of color. Ma'am, You wanted to lead, now you get to. Don't waste it. She walked away before he could respond. The operations center at Port Regent had been designed to replicate forward operating base command capabilities. Tactical Operations Center, TOC, banks of screens showing live feeds from helmet cams, drone footage, tactical maps overlaid with GPS coordinates, communication systems cycling through encrypted channels. It was as close to real combat command as you could get without someone actually shooting back. Reese stood in the center of the TOC, headset on, tablet in hand. Around her, 6 other evaluators, SEAL instructors, Marine officers, Garrett Blackwood in the back corner, observer status. But his presence meant something. Everyone in the room knew it. On the main screen, 4 helmet cam feeds. Mackenzie, Cole, Granger, Sterling. They were staged at the entry point to a compound mock-up built to mirror Syrian architecture. Concrete walls, narrow alleys, rooftop access, civilian role players mixed with hostile role players. Intelligence package that was deliberately incomplete, just like the real world. The scenario brief had been simple. American journalists captured by hostile forces, Held in a compound in a contested urban area. Heavy civilian presence. Rules of engagement strict. Extract the HVT. Minimize casualties. Get out. What they didn't know was that the journalist wasn't where intelligence said he was. What they didn't know was that the compound was pre-rigged for ambush. What they didn't know was that this exercise had been designed from the beginning to fail. Because sometimes the mission isn't about success. It's about how you handle failure. Reese keyed the radio. Team 3, you are cleared hot. Execute on your mark. Mackenzie's voice came back. Steady, professional. Copy, Team 3 moving. They breached the outer wall. Smooth entry. Cole went high. Granger went low. Sterling held rear security. Mackenzie called the movements. Crisp, confident. They'd learned something. First room, clear. Second room, 2 civilians, hands up. Speaking rapid Arabic. Role play. Mackenzie held them at gunpoint while Cole secured them with zip ties. Textbook. No shots fired. Third room, contact. Hostile role player with AK mock-up. Granger engaged. Marking round center mass. Hostile down. Clean kill. They moved through the compound. Room by room, methodical, controlled. Better than the first exercise. Better than Reese expected. Then they reached the room where intelligence said the journalist would be. Mackenzie breached, swept in, empty. Just furniture and dust. His voice over the radio. Strange showing. TO primary location is negative. HVT not present. Request guidance. Reese looked at Colonel Brennan. He nodded. She keyed the mic. Check secondary location. North building, second floor. Copy, moving to secondary. They crossed the open courtyard. Exposed. Vulnerable. Sterling called it out. We're in the open. Move fast. They did, but halfway across the ambush, hit. Simulated gunfire from 3 rooftop positions. Smoke grenades, flash bangs, chaos. Sterling took a hit, marking round to the leg. He went down, not KIA, but wounded. Simulated severe trauma. He couldn't walk, couldn't move without help. Mackenzie froze, just for a second. But in combat, a second is everything. His breathing over the radio got rapid, shallow. Panic setting in. Cole was screaming. We're pinned. We need to move. Granger fired wildly at the rooftops, wasting ammunition, no target discipline. And Mackenzie just stood there, staring at Sterling on the ground, bleeding simulated blood from a simulated wound. But in his mind, he wasn't in Syria. He was in Fallujah, watching his brother go down, watching him bleed, watching him lose his leg, watching him lose everything. In the TOC, Garrett leaned forward. He's locked up. Reese didn't respond, just watched the screen, watched Mackenzie spiral. Then Sterling's voice cut through the radio, calm, clear, even wounded. Mackenzie, listen to me. We need to move. Now. No response. Corporal Mackenzie, I'm giving you a direct order. Make the call. Get us out or get us killed. But make the call. Nothing. Sterling made the decision himself. Cole, Granger, tactical withdrawal. Leave the HVT, extract with wounded. Move now. Cole grabbed Sterling under one arm. Granger took the other. They dragged him back toward the entry point. Mackenzie followed. On autopilot. Not leading, just moving because someone else made the choice. They reached the extraction point. Loaded into the vehicle. Exercise complete. In the TOC, Reese pulled off her headset. Colonel Brennan looked at her. That was hard to watch. Yes, sir. The Sterling kid. He took command when his leader couldn't. That's the kind of operator we need. Agreed. What about Mackenzie? Reese was quiet for a moment. He's not done yet. The debrief room was packed. All 4 teams, all evaluators. Colonel Brennan at the front, Reese beside him, Garrett standing against the back wall, arms crossed, watching. Brennan spoke first. Team 3, Corporal Mackenzie, step forward. Mackenzie walked to the front, stood at attention, jaw tight, eyes forward. Corporal, you froze under fire. Your team was pinned, your teammate was wounded, and you couldn't make a decision. Explain. Mackenzie's voice cracked. Sir, I saw my teammate go down and You what? I saw my brother, sir, in Fallujah. He was wounded. I was there, not in command, but there, and I watched him bleed. And today when Sterling went down, I was back there. I couldn't move. The room was silent. Brennan looked at Reese. She stepped forward. Corporal Mackenzie, your brother, Captain Devin Mackenzie, was wounded in 2016 under my command. Fallujah. He lost his leg. Every eye in the room was on her now. He made a choice that day. His mobility or 4 lives. He chose 4 lives. That's what warriors do. She paused. Let that settle. But before we continue, there's something else you need to understand about this exercise. She gestured to the door. It opened. Garrett walked through. But he wasn't in his usual flannel. He wore dusty civilian clothes, dark cargo pants, worn jacket, a press vest with faded logos, fake press credentials hanging from his neck. The room stirred. Confusion rippling through the ranks. Garrett walked to the front, stood beside Reese, his voice carried. The journalist you were looking for in that compound, the HVT, that was me. Mackenzie's eyes widened. Master Chief, Commander Caldwell and I designed this exercise together 6 weeks ago. There was never going to be a journalist at the primary location. Or the secondary. We needed to see what you'd do when the mission parameters changed, when everything you thought you knew was wrong. He looked directly at Sterling. Then you made the call to extract with wounded instead of chasing a ghost. In 2017, the real Syria operation lost 2 SEALs doing exactly what you didn't do. They kept pushing for an objective that wasn't there. You learned from their mistake without having to die for it. The weight of that settled over the room like a blanket. Garrett continued. This wasn't a test of whether you could complete a mission. It was a test of whether you could recognize when a mission needed to change. Most operators fail that test. Sterling passed. Reese stepped forward again. Private Sterling, you took command when your leader couldn't. You prioritized your people over the objective. That's the hardest call to make. And you made it under fire. Then she turned back to Mackenzie. Her voice softened, just slightly. You froze, but you didn't override Sterling. You let him lead when you couldn't. That took a different kind of strength. The strength to step back. Mackenzie's hands were shaking. Ma'am, I failed my team. You're still learning what failure means. Before she could say more, the door opened again. A wheelchair rolled through, pushed by a young petty officer. But the man in the chair didn't need help. He wheeled himself forward with strong, confident strokes. Captain Devin Mackenzie, early 30s, short military haircut, sharp uniform, captain's bars gleaming. And where his right leg should have been below the knee, a carbon fiber prosthetic visible beneath his pant leg. The room erupted in whispers. Thorne Mackenzie turned, saw his brother. His face collapsed. Every defense, every wall, everything crumbled. Devin wheeled himself to the front, stopped between Reese and Brennan, looked directly at his younger brother. Thorne, just his name, but the weight in it, the love, the pain, the frustration, all of it in one word. I'm here because Commander Caldwell called me 3 days ago, told me you were struggling, told me you'd been carrying something that wasn't yours to carry, and I got on a plane because I should have done this 3 years ago. His voice was strong, clear, no hesitation, no self-pity. That day in Fallujah, when I moved into that street, when I drew that fire, that was my choice, mine, not Commander Caldwell's, not yours, mine. Thorne's tears were falling now, silent, streaming. I saw where she was pinned, saw the angles, knew if I didn't move, all 4 of them would die. So I moved, took 2 rounds, lost my leg, and I'd do it again, every time. Because that's what we do. We choose, and sometimes the choice costs us something. But the alternative costs more. He wheeled closer, close enough to reach out. He grabbed his brother's hand, held it tight. Losing my leg was hard. The surgeries, the rehab, learning to walk again, all of it. But you want to know what the hardest part was? Thorne couldn't speak, just shook his head. Watching you destroy yourself with anger. Watching you blame Commander Caldwell for saving my life. Watching you carry guilt that doesn't belong to you. Devin's voice cracked for the first time. I'm alive, brother. I walked my daughter to her first day of school. I held my wife through her father's funeral. I coached Little League last summer. I'm alive. And every day I get is because of the choice I made and the commander who got us all out. He pulled Thorne closer, forced him to meet his eyes. You froze today because you're still living in that street in Fallujah. But I'm not. I moved on. And you need to move on too. Not from me, not from the memory, but from the anger. Let it go. Thorne dropped to his knees, put his head against his brother's arm, sobbed, deep, wrenching, years of grief and guilt and rage pouring out. Devin held him, stroked his head like when they were kids, like when Thorne was 5 and Devin was 10, and their father deployed for the first time, and Thorne cried for a week. The room stayed silent. Even Brennan didn't interrupt. Some moments are too sacred for rank. After a long time, Devin helped Thorne stand, steadied him. You're a good Marine, but you'll be a great one when you stop fighting ghosts and start leading people. Thorne wiped his face, tried to compose himself, failed, tried again. I'm sorry for everything, for blaming her, for carrying this, for... Stop, Devin's voice firm. You don't apologize to me. You prove to me. You take what you learned today and you lead with it. You take care of your people the way I took care of mine. That's how you honor what I did. Not with anger, with action. Thorne nodded. Couldn't speak. Just nodded. Devin looked at Reese. Thank you, Commander, for giving him this chance, for not giving up on him when you had every reason to. She met his eyes. You asked me to help him. I'm just keeping a promise. Devin wheeled himself to the side, positioned himself where he could watch the rest of the proceedings. Garrett stood beside him. 2 veterans, different generations, same code. Reese turned back to the room, let them settle, then continued. This exercise was based on a real operation. Syria 2017, I wasn't there, but I studied it, we all did, because we learn from failure more than success. She gestured to the screen, pulled up after action photos, real ones. 2 operators died that day chasing an objective that didn't exist. 12 more were wounded. The mission was deemed a failure. But it taught us something critical. Sometimes success isn't completing the objective. It's recognizing when the objective has changed. Private Sterling understood that instinctively. That's what separates survivors from casualties. Colonel Brennan stepped forward. Team 3, here are your evaluations. The room tensed. This was it. Pass or fail. Deploy or stay home. Corporal Mackenzie, you froze under fire. You failed to lead when your team needed leadership. Under normal circumstances, that would be an automatic failure. Mackenzie stood rigid, expecting the worst. However, you demonstrated the ability to recognize your own limitations in the moment. You stepped back and allowed Private Sterling to take command. That shows maturity and self-awareness that many officers twice your age lack. Your evaluation is conditional pass. You are approved for deployment pending successful completion of 6 weeks leadership development program. You will report to Sergeant Major Willis on Monday. Your brother has agreed to participate in your counseling sessions. Mackenzie exhaled. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Corporal Cole, your performance showed improvement from initial exercises, but you still demonstrate stress response issues that require additional training. You are assigned to 8 weeks remedial training, small unit tactics and combat stress management. You will be reevaluated in December. If you pass, you'll join the next rotation. Cole nodded, disappointed but accepting. Yes, sir. Lance Corporal Granger, you have failed this evaluation. You demonstrated poor judgment, excessive aggression, and inability to follow rules of engagement under pressure. You are removed from Task Force Orion. You will complete mandatory anger management counseling and psychological evaluation. You will not be considered for future joint operations until you receive full clearance. Granger's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. Yes, sir. Private Sterling, you performed at the highest level throughout this evaluation period. You demonstrated tactical proficiency, emotional control, and decisive leadership when it mattered most. You are recommended for SEAL training pipeline. Commander Caldwell has agreed to personally sponsor your application. You will begin basic underwater demolition training in January. Sterling stood, saluted. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. You already haven't. Brennan looked around the room. The rest of you have your assignments. Dismissed. The teams filed out. Slowly, processing. Devon and Thorne stayed behind, talking quietly near the wall. Garrett watched them, smiled slightly. Some things heal in their own time. Cole approached Reese as the room cleared, stood at attention. Ma'am, request permission to speak. Granted. I know I failed, but I want to ask, can I try again? Really try, not just go through the motions. Reese studied him, saw something there, something that hadn't been there before. 8 weeks, Corporal. Work on your breathing. Control your fear. Trust your training. Then we'll talk. Yes, ma'am. He saluted, left with purpose in his stride. Granger didn't approach. He stood near the door, made eye contact with Reese across the room. She nodded once, he nodded back. Not forgiveness, not absolution, just acknowledgement. He had work to do, hard work, the kind you can't fake. Only he could decide if he'd do it. He left. Sterling approached last. Ma'am, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, just live up to it. I will. I know. He left. The room was empty now, except for Reese, Garrett, Devon, and Thorne. Devon wheeled over. Commander, one more thing. Yes. Thorne told me what happened at the bar, the drinks, the comments, all of it. Reese's expression didn't change. It's handled. I know, but I wanted you to know. Our father, Colonel Robert Mackenzie, he taught us better than that. He would have been ashamed. I'm ashamed. Your brother was carrying anger that had nowhere to go. He found a target. It wasn't personal. It was personal enough. Devon looked at his brother. But he's going to be better. I promise you that. Thorne finally found his voice. I will be. I swear it. Reese looked at both of them. Then we're good. Dismissed. They left. Brothers. Together. The way it should have been from the start. Garrett walked over, stood beside Reese. You gave them more than they deserved. I gave them what they needed. Not always the same thing. Today it was. He smiled. Your old man would have done it differently. How T.A.M. louder, angrier. He had a temper when people disrespected his Marines. Reese smiled slightly. I know. I watched him chew out a colonel once for leaving his men in the rain during an inspection. That was a good day. It was. They stood in comfortable silence. Two people who'd known each other long enough that words weren't always necessary. Finally, Garrett said, What's next for you? I don't know. Maybe teaching. Maybe another rotation. Maybe something else. You've got options. Yeah, that's a good problem to have. It is. She picked up her tablet, headed for the door, paused. Thanks for playing journalist. An enemy commander. And civilian casualty. You're a versatile old man. He laughed. Anything for the cause. She left. Garrett stood alone in the empty briefing room, looked at the screen, still showing Syrian compound footage. Frozen on the moment Sterling made his call. Good operator. Better instincts. He'd make a hell of a SEAL. Garrett powered down the system. Locked the room. Went home. 8 months felt like 8 years when you were counting. But they passed. Winter turned to spring. Cold Carolina coast warmed just enough to remember what sun felt like. Ships came and went. Deployments cycled. Some people came home. Some didn't. That was the nature of the work. Walker's Cove looked exactly the same. Time moved differently in places like this. The signs still flickered every 4th second. The wood was still dark. The jukebox still didn't work. The floor still had that soft give. History compressed into walls and floors and worn bar stools that had held countless warriors through countless wars. Reese pushed through the door at 2000 hours on a Tuesday. Civilian clothes, dark jeans, gray jacket, boots that had seen Syrian sand. She'd been stateside for 3 weeks. Final deployment complete, 4-year rotation done. She was officially between assignments. Officially had time to decide what came next. Garrett was behind the bar, wiping glasses. He saw her, smiled, poured water with lemon without being asked. Set it down on her usual spot. Welcome home. Thanks. How was it? Everyone came home. He nodded. That was the only metric that mattered. Good. She sat, took a sip, let the quiet settle. At the far end of the bar, a young man sat alone. Fit, military haircut, civilian clothes but military posture. She glanced over. Private Wyatt Sterling, Bud's candidate, halfway through training, top of his class, making it look easy the way only natural operators do. He raised his glass. She nodded back. Garrett set down an envelope in front of her. This came 2 weeks ago. Held it for you. She picked it up. Return address, Corporal Thorne Mackenzie, APO, Iraq deployment. She opened it. Read, Commander Caldwell, leading my squad now. Real deployment, real missions. We ran an op last week. Bad intel, ambush. One of my guys took a round to the shoulder. I didn't freeze. Made the call. Extracted with wounded. Came back the next day with air support. Completed secondary objective. Everyone came home. Devon was right about everything. Thank you for not giving up on me. Semper Fi. Thorne. She folded the letter, set it down. Stared at it for a long moment. Garrett refilled her water. Good news. Yeah, good news. The door opened. Cold air rushed in even though it was spring. A young woman stepped through, early 20s, fresh Marine uniform, private first class rank, nervous, looking around like she wasn't sure she was in the right place. Her eyes found the photos on the wall. Old team photos, Gulf War, Somalia, Bosnia, and newer ones. A photo of Reese in desert camouflage. Full combat gear, rifle across her chest. Standing next to Garrett's old Master Chief portrait. The young woman approached the bar, hesitant. Excuse me, is this where Commander Caldwell comes? Garrett smiled. Sometimes. You looking for her? I'm assigned to Port Regent. Integration training starts Monday. I heard she evaluates there. I just wanted to see the place. Where she started. Reese turned on her stool. First time at the Cove. The young woman looked over. Recognition hit. Her eyes went wide. Yes, ma'am. Reese gestured to the empty stool. Sit. She did. Garrett set water down without asking. On the house. Reese studied her. What's your name? Private First Class Morgan Ashford, ma'am. Relax, Private. You're off duty. What brings you here? Morgan took a breath, steadied herself. Ma'am, I'm the only woman in my platoon. My platoon sergeant told me I'd wash out in the first month. Said women don't belong in combat units. I wanted to find proof he was wrong. Reese was quiet. Then she said, You won't find proof in a bar. You'll find it in yourself. How? By making the hard choice when it comes. By standing up when everyone expects you to quit. By doing the work when no one's watching. Morgan absorbed that. How do you know when that moment comes? You'll know because it'll be the hardest thing you've ever done. And you'll do it anyway. Garrett leaned on the bar. Commander Caldwell came in here when she was 17. Told me she wanted to be a SEAL. I thought she was crazy. Morgan's eyes widened. What happened? She proved me wrong. Every single day for 10 years. Still proving me wrong. Reese pulled a napkin from the dispenser. Wrote something on it. Slid it across. My number. If you need anything, guidance, questions, someone who's been to where you are, use it. Morgan picked it up, folded it carefully, put it in her pocket like it was precious. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you prove your sergeant wrong. I will. Morgan stood, squared her shoulders. Something had changed in her posture. Small, but real. She left, door swinging shut. Sterling walked over, stood beside Reese. Ma'am, I shipped to advanced training Monday. Just wanted to say thanks before I go. You earned every bit of it, Sterling. Don't waste it. I won't. He paused. Mackenzie sent me a letter too. He's doing well. Leading well. Said to tell you the team listens to him now. Reese smiled. Small. Genuine. Good. Sterling left. Bar quiet again. Just Reese and Garrett. The old warrior and the current one. Different generations. Same code. Garrett topped off her water. Building a legacy. Just doing the job. More than that, you're changing the game. One conversation at a time. Maybe. No, maybe. You are. She stood. Left cash on the bar. More than in the water costs. He didn't argue. See you around, Garrett. See you around, kid. She walked to the door. Paused. Looked back at the photos. Her father in his SEAL gear. Young. Strong. Gone too soon. Garrett's team from decades past. Some still alive. Some not. Her own photo. Recent. Still here, still fighting. And now Sterling's photo. Newest edition. Bud's candidate. The line continuing. She pushed through the door into the Carolina night. Clear sky. Stars visible. The harbor in the distance. Ships at anchor. Lights steady, deliberate, eternal. But behind her in Walker's Cove, Garrett stood at the bar, looked at the wall of photos, raised his glass. The warrior spirit doesn't die. It just finds new homes. He drank, set the glass down, went back to work. Outside, Reese climbed into her truck, sat in the driver's seat, didn't start the engine, just sat, breathing, processing 8 months of deployment, 8 months of decisions, 8 months of bringing people home. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. "Ma'am, this is PFC Ashford. Thank you for tonight. I won't let you down," Reese typed back. "You won't let yourself down. That's what matters." She started the engine, pulled out. The sign for Walker's Cove flickered in her mirror. Once, twice, then faded as she drove. The road stretched ahead, dark, empty, full of possibility. She didn't know what came next, but she knew what came before, and she knew what she'd built. A foundation, a standard, a path for others to follow. The rest was up to them. She drove into the night, headlights cutting through darkness. Behind her the bar, the stories, the legacy, ahead the unknown, the future, the next mission. And somewhere in between the warrior spirit, passed from one generation to the next, unbroken, eternal, always burning. The story ended, but the legacy never would.